Peter, a millionaire, disguises himself as a homeless man to see how society truly treats the less fortunate. Day after day, he's met with cold indifference, until one young woman, Lily, stops to offer him food and compassion. Touched by her kindness, Peter realizes that empathy is far more valuable than wealth. As the experiment nears its end, Peter prepares to reveal his true identity to Lily, with a surprising gift that will change her life forever. The story takes a powerful turn, showing how one simple act of kindness can ripple through lives in ways no one expects. But before we dive in, leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from today. And if Peter and Lily's story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. In the heart of Evergrove, a thriving metropolitan city where fortunes were made and lost daily, Peter Graham stood at the pinnacle of success. He was a self-made millionaire, respected by his peers and beloved by his employees. Yet, something weighed heavily on his mind. For years, Peter had used his wealth to support countless charitable causes. He donated to homeless shelters, supported youth centers, and even set up a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. However, one evening, as he sat in his lavish penthouse overlooking the city, he couldn't shake an uncomfortable thought. Am I really making a difference? He had given money and resources, but did he truly understand the struggles faced by those living on the streets? Did people really see the homeless, or did they look past them, pretending they didn't exist? Peter wanted answers, and so he devised a plan, an experiment that would give him insight into the lives of those less fortunate. Peter would go undercover as a homeless man for an entire week, relying solely on the generosity of strangers. He wanted to see firsthand how society treated people living on the streets. His goal wasn't just to observe the behavior of others, but to challenge his own perceptions as well. The next morning, Peter began his transformation. Gone were the tailored suits and polished shoes. Instead, he dressed in old, torn clothes, items he had purchased from a thrift store to look as authentic as possible. He donned a woolen hat, pulled low to cover his face, and smudged dirt across his hands and cheeks to complete the look. Standing before a mirror in his mansion, Peter could hardly recognize himself. This is it, he thought. For the next 7 days, I'm no longer Peter Graham, the millionaire. I'm just another homeless man. It didn't take long for Peter to feel the sting of his new reality. On the first day of his experiment, Peter positioned himself on the corner of a bustling intersection in Evergrove's financial district. This was where businesspeople hurried to their offices, coffees in hand, with little time to spare. Peter held a simple sign that read, "Lost everything. Hungry. Anything helps." He watched as a river of people flowed past him, some stealing quick glances before looking away, others barely acknowledging his existence. He called out a few times, "Spare change, please," but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. He sat there for hours, the ache in his stomach growing as his hope for human kindness dwindled. A young couple walked by, laughing and chatting. Peter looked up, hopeful. He reached out, asking for $1, but the man frowned, pulling his girlfriend closer, as if Peter were a threat. A businessman brushed past him, talking loudly on his phone about stock market gains. Peter raised his hand to get his attention, but the man turned his back, never breaking stride. As the day went on, Peter realized that, to most people, he wasn't just ignored, he was invisible. By the time the sun began to set, Peter hadn't received a single dollar. His spirits were low, but he was more determined than ever to see this through. That night, he slept on a park bench, wrapping his thin jacket tightly around him as the cool night air bit at his skin. The following days were no different. Peter tried different parts of the city, outside busy coffee shops, in parks, near office buildings, but the result was always the same. People avoided eye contact, stepping around him as though he were an obstacle rather than a person. One afternoon, as Peter sat on the steps of a government building, he overheard 2 women walking past him. They spoke in hushed tones, but Peter caught their words. "It's such a shame," one of them said, glancing at Peter. "He's probably an addict, or worse." The other woman nodded. "Yeah, they never want help. They just use the money for drugs. Best to keep walking." Peter's heart sank. He didn't know how widespread this perception was, but it was clear that many people had hardened their hearts against the homeless, assuming the worst without knowing their stories. For Peter, this wasn't just an experiment anymore. It was personal. He had once prided himself on his charitable donations, thinking he was doing enough. But now, sitting on the cold pavement, feeling the weight of the world's indifference, he understood the deep isolation that came with being ignored and judged by society. By the fourth day, Peter's body ached from sleeping outside, his back stiff from the hard benches, and his stomach growled in hunger. He sat in front of a coffee shop, watching people come and go with their cups of warm drinks, hoping someone would spare him a few dollars. It was then that a young woman named Lily approached. She had soft brown eyes and wore a simple floral dress. Unlike everyone else, she didn't avert her gaze when she saw Peter. Instead, she stopped and knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Her voice was filled with genuine concern. Peter was stunned. He hadn't expected anyone to actually talk to him, let alone kneel beside him as if he were her equal. "I've been better," Peter replied, his voice hoarse from days of little use. Lily reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich, wrapped neatly in paper. "I don't have much," she said, handing it to him, "but I hope this helps." Peter accepted the sandwich, his heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't just the food that moved him, it was the simple act of kindness. In a city full of people who had ignored him for days, Lily was the first person to look at him and see him as a human being. "Thank you," Peter whispered, struggling to hold back tears. Lily smiled and sat down beside him, asking about his story. Peter hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but he decided to tell her a partial truth. He said he had lost everything, which, in a way, was true. For the past week, he had lost the comfort, privilege, and respect that came with his wealth. He explained that he was trying to get back on his feet, but hadn't had much luck. Lily listened intently, nodding as he spoke. "It must be really hard," she said softly. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but please hang in there. Things will get better, I'm sure of it." Her words, simple yet sincere, pierced through Peter's hardened exterior. For the first time in days, he felt hope, a hope not based on money or status, but on the kindness of a stranger who saw him for more than just his outward appearance. The experiment was nearing its end, and Peter knew he had to reveal his true identity. He had found what he was looking for, though not in the way he had expected. Society's general indifference was disheartening, but Lily's act of kindness was a shining beacon of hope. On the seventh day, Peter tracked down Lily at the small flower shop where she worked. Still dressed in his ragged clothes, he walked in, causing a few customers to glance at him with suspicion. When Lily saw him, her face lit up with recognition. "Hey, how are you?" she asked warmly. Peter smiled, grateful once again for her kindness. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice steady but serious. Lily looked confused but curious. "I'm not really homeless," Peter said, pulling off his woolen hat and running a hand through his hair. "My name is Peter Graham. I'm a millionaire, and I've been undercover for the past week, trying to see how people treat the homeless." Lily's eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what?" Peter nodded and explained everything. The experiment, the indifference he faced, and the lesson he had learned about compassion. He spoke of how, out of everyone he had encountered, she was the only one who had treated him with kindness. "I'm not here to just say thank you," Peter continued, pulling an envelope from his coat pocket. "I want to repay your kindness." Lily looked at the envelope, hesitant. "But I didn't do anything special," she said quietly. "I just wanted to help." "That's exactly why I'm doing this," Peter replied, handing her the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. Lily gasped, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't have to say anything," Peter said with a smile. "Just know that the world needs more people like you." As Peter left the flower shop that day, he felt lighter than he had in years. The experiment had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He realized that while his wealth allowed him to give in a financial sense, true change required empathy, understanding, and human connection. Lily, on the other hand, was left in awe of the turn of events. Her simple act of kindness had led to a life-changing moment, one she never expected. From that day forward, Peter continued his philanthropy, but with a new perspective. He didn't just give money, he gave time, compassion, and understanding. And whenever he saw someone in need, he remembered the lesson he had learned on the streets of Evergrove, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply to see someone and acknowledge their worth. Because in a world where so many people walk past without looking, the real millionaires are those who give from the heart.